When I was younger, my family rented a beach house for a weekend one summer. The house rental was cut extremely short, and this is why. It was our first day there. We went to the beach and then went out to eat for dinner. The sand dunes were very hilly near the house, and that night, my brother Joey and I came up with the idea of sand sliding down the hills. We found a couple of big cardboard boxes in one of the closets in the house, so we cut pieces off the boxes to use as sleds. Our parents didn't mind us going out in the dark as long as we wouldn't stray too far away from the house. We found what seemed to be the tallest part of the sand hill and started riding down the pieces of cardboard box as if they were sleds. It worked pretty well, actually. When Joey made it to the bottom, I'd say his third or fourth time, he called up to me, "Tyler, what is that?" I didn't see what he meant, so I slid down the hill again and looked at what he was pointing at. It was something in the ocean. It was this black object sticking out from the water. The moon's reflection on the ocean was just enough to see this object but not know what it was. It looked like something was definitely floating in the water, though. We were a little freaked out and too scared to go closer and look at what it was, so we walked a little further down the beach to look for a different hill. We found one that wasn't as tall, but it was still near enough to the house. My brother slid down the hill first, and I stood at the top watching. I looked out to the ocean again and saw that black object in the water again. It's as if we didn't even move or as if it followed us. I yelled at Joey to look at the ocean again. He looked and probably saw it right away because he ran up the hill to me, freaked out. We were discussing what we thought the thing could be. Maybe we didn't move as much as we thought we did. We stared at the object for a while. We could see it was bopping around a bit. We looked down the beach at the house we were staying at. It wasn't too far away, so we decided to get a closer look at this floating object. We thought maybe it was a dead animal floating in the water. We couldn't have been more wrong. As we got maybe halfway to the water, the black object floating around, bopping in the water, started to rise, and we realized it wasn't floating at all. A person's body was revealed as they stood up at a towering height, arms now flat at their sides. It was a person's head this whole time. We ran to the house and slammed the door behind us, yelling to our parents. Our parents seemed confident that there was no threat from someone going for a night swim, though, even after we said they were following us in the water. Our dad went out to the backyard deck with the lights on and looked around the beach, and when he didn't see anyone, he told us we had nothing to worry about. It wasn't until later that night that we heard our mom scream from the living room as Joey and I were in the room we were sharing. We jumped out of our beds to rush outside and see what it was. As we entered the living room, our dad yelled at us to go back to our room, but we didn't listen right away. They were looking at something outside. We walked over to see what it was they were staring at. Close enough to see him, a naked, smiling man was on the backyard deck waving. My dad then physically moved us back into our bedroom and told us not to come out. We heard everything as our dad was screaming threats of calling the police at the man, and there was a loud bang from the glass of the back door, accompanied by the sound of our mom screaming. Our dad yelled at our mom to go stay with the kids. She came into the room and tried to comfort us while we heard our dad calling 911 and bangs on the glass. Our dad is not a big guy, and he's far from a fighter, so the chances of him going outside to confront that man himself were slim to none unless it was absolutely necessary. This went on for a few minutes before the bangs stopped, and our dad seemed calmer. A bunch of police cars came to the house. There were more police officers in the house than I can remember counting. My brother and I were asked to describe what we saw on the beach to help tie the whole story together. Our parents to this day tell us that the most likely explanation was a child predator on drugs. It was a very sick and disturbing thing for our entire family to go through. In fact, 12 years later, it's still cringy and disturbing to think back on. And yes, the obvious answer to the obvious question, did we leave after that encounter? Yes, we did, and our parents got their money back. We ended up staying at a nearby resort so as not to waste the weekend, but obviously, we were all a bit shaken up after that. Our old town in Florida was right by a bunch of different beaches. My sisters and I would frequently go to the beach during the sunset hours because fewer people were there, and the views were always beautiful. Sometimes we'd play volleyball, sometimes we'd go in the water, and sometimes we'd just lay in the sand. My youngest sister, Veronica, who was 13 years old, wanted to go in the water one night. The sun was setting and it was getting dark out. So as the older brother and basically the supervisor, I told her to be back in 10 minutes. She ran into the water, and after watching her for about a minute, I looked down at my phone. My other sister, who was 16 years old, wanted to play volleyball. I was up for it. There was a volleyball net and a poorly inflated volleyball sitting next to it. It was good enough, though. We made do with it. When I looked away from the volleyball net, I couldn't see Veronica. I looked in every possible direction she could have gone in the water, but I did not see her. It was getting darker and harder to see. I ran to the water to try and find Veronica. I ran into the water, and when I couldn't run anymore, I swam. She wasn't in the water anywhere, but I saw a boat nearby. A big, luxurious boat close enough to swim over to. It took me a couple of minutes, but I got there. I hoisted myself up onto the bow off some tiny stepladder and heard laughing below deck. There was a hatch door that was open and there were lights on down there. I called out for help. Then there was silence. I called out that I was looking for my sister. Then I heard Veronica from below the deck. She called out my name. I hurried down the stairs into the cabin to see Veronica sitting on a bed with a Coke in her hands. Further down the cabin were two grown-ass men sitting opposite each other, looking at me. I grabbed Veronica into my arms and one of the men said with a smile that I have a very nice sister. The other man seemed to catch on to my suspicion right away and claimed that the two of them were just offering to give her a ride and some snacks because they saw her all alone in the water. I didn't even say a word to them. One of them asked if we needed a ride back to shore. I didn't answer. I told Veronica to swim back to the beach with me. We got back to shore in a couple of minutes and the boat was far gone into the sunset. I brought my two sisters home and had my dad figure out what he should do. First of all, he was mad at me for not getting details of the boat or the men's faces, and he was right. My dad punished Veronica and prohibited her from going to the beach past sunrise from there on out. I live near a coastal area that has a few popular beaches. On this night I was with two other friends, but it was really late, so there weren't really any other people around except for the occasional police car or other visitor to the beach. We must have gotten there close to 11 p.m. We hung around sitting in my car and on the beach for a few hours. The three of us were talking about some sad stuff that a friend had been going through, so we were already in an upset mindset. Nothing weird happened while we were there. There were just some other kids that hung around for a bit and left. We left the beach around 1:30 a.m. I was driving, and I had a friend in the passenger seat and one in the seat directly behind me. The road back to town goes past a state park and goes down a rural back road with some houses along the way before the main road. A white Subaru pulled out in front of us as we drove by the park a few minutes after we left the beach. We didn't really think much of it until it started going really slow, like maybe 15 miles per hour, when the speed limit was 25 or so in the area. We weren't concerned about it at first, just annoyed. This continued for a bit, and because we were on this winding back road, I couldn't pass them. After a few minutes, the road curved to the right. I noticed someone running down the side of the road against traffic, so towards my car. I was very confused at first that someone was running at almost 2 in the morning. I immediately noticed this person was dressed in all black and had a huge mane of gray hair. I told my friends to look at this because my attention was fixed on not driving into this very slow car in front of us. I noticed out of the corner of my eye that as this guy continued down the road towards my car, he drifted further to the side of the road. I thought that he was avoiding something on the shoulder, but a second later my friend screamed. I looked to my left to see the guy right next to my door. At this point, I had a little bit of space between me and the car in front of us, so I floored it for a second to get past him. The car does not stop though, and we keep driving for a minute or so until we reach this traffic circle where the car immediately goes back down the road we just left, much faster than it was driving before. My friends and I were freaking out because I didn't realize what was happening, but that it was very weird. As we drove away, my friends told me that as he got closer, they could see the guy had his face all painted white, except for black circles around his eyes. He had this green clown wig on. My friend in the passenger seat noticed that he was holding either a crowbar or a bat, and the one seated behind me said that he was running right for my door, which was unlocked at the time because my car doesn't automatically lock. He was reaching out for my door only like a foot away by the time we got away. We called the police, of course, and they looked into it but didn't find anything, and neither did we when, out of an adrenaline rush, We went back to see where it happened. What do you guys think this was? At first, we didn't connect the car with the clown guy, and initially thought that maybe he had just done something like robbed a house in the neighborhood because of the clown makeup and the bat or crowbar and was running away from it and was going to carjack us to get away or something. But my friend's mom thinks that we may have been identified when we were at the beach as targets for some kind of robbery. My only thing is that if the car was involved and they wanted to do us some harm, they could have done it at a stop sign so that we couldn't have gotten away. If anyone has any ideas, please comment. It was really a distressing situation in the moment, especially considering how close a call it was, and we really wanted to just have some kind of idea about what we experienced that night.